All right, let's talk about a number. A number so massive, so incomprehensibly huge, that it feels like a glitch in the matrix. It's a number that, whether we realize it or not, secretly shapes our lives, our countries, and our future. This is the story of the $323 trillion question.
So, there it is, $323 trillion. That's the total sum of global debt. I mean, just look at all those zeros. This isn't just some abstract figure on a screen. It's the combined weight of the world's promises. And what it means is, for every dollar of actual value we create in the world, we owe more than 3. Let that sink in for a second.
So how do you even begin to wrap your head around a number that big? Well, imagine you started stacking it. $1 bills. A tower of $323 trillion wouldn't just reach the moon. It would blow right past it, continuing on into the silent, empty void of deep space. A monument to our collective IOUs.
And that, right there, leads to the big, kind of mind-bending question at the heart of this whole thing. If every country, every corporation, every person on Earth owes all this money, who exactly do we owe it to? Is it aliens? I mean, seriously, who is the creditor? It sounds like a riddle, but the answer? Well, the answer unlocks the secret engine of our entire modern economy.
To figure that out, we've got to go back. Way back. We're going to have to be like financial archaeologists for a minute, because the system we live in today didn't just happen by accident. Oh no, it was engineered, piece by piece, over hundreds of years. So, let's dig in and uncover the origin story of how our money got tangled up with debt.
This whole system really boils down to 3 pivotal moments. It all gets started way back in the 15th century with the Medici family in Florence, who were finding some very clever workarounds for religious laws. Then you have the absolute game changer in 1694 with the founding of the Bank of England. And then, much more recently in our own lifetime, you get the era of quantitative easing, which is basically just a fancy term for central banks digitally creating money to buy up debt. And that just put the whole original system on steroids.
So it all started with the Medici. These guys were brilliant bankers, but they had a problem. The church said charging interest was a sin. So, to get around that, they invented all these complex new financial tools. And that led to this radical idea we now call fractional reserve banking. It's basically magic. It's the ability for a bank to lend out way more money than it actually has sitting in its vault. It is a system built from the ground up on nothing more than confidence. Okay, so this is the real alchemical moment. Picture this, it's 1694. The King of England? Flat broke. He needs cash for a war. So a group of private bankers comes to him and makes a deal he can't refuse. They said, let us hold your debt, and we will turn it into money for you. And just like that, for the very first time, a government's debt was magically transformed into a nation's money supply. The machine was officially born.
So that little deal back in the 17th century, it created this incredible, powerful machine. And now we need to ask a really important question. Who's driving this thing today? Because the power to turn debt into money has, over time, shifted from kings and countries to a new, almost invisible kind of financial empire.
Let's meet the new titans. First up, BlackRock. That number you see on the screen, $11.5 trillion, that's how much in assets they manage. Now, to put that into perspective, that is more than the entire yearly economic output of Germany, Japan, and the UK combined. Just one company.
And get this, they're not even the only one. You've also got their main rival, Vanguard, clocking in at $8 trillion. So you put these two together, and they're managing close to $20 trillion. At that point, they're not just players in the market. In a lot of ways, they are the market, the new hidden sovereigns of the global economy.
So what does all that power actually look like in the real world? Well, check this out. Pick any huge company you can think of, Apple, Microsoft, Amazon. Chances are BlackRock and Vanguard are 2 of their biggest shareholders. This creates a really weird situation that economists call common ownership. Think about it. If you own both Coca-Cola and Pepsi, are you really going to let them have a brutal price war that hurts both their profits? No way. You want stability. So this structure actually discourages the very competition that capitalism is supposed to thrive on. Okay, so let's go back to our original riddle. Who owns all this debt? This chart of the U.S. national debt is, honestly, it's pretty wild. You see what you'd expect. Foreign countries have a slice, so do mutual funds, many of which are run by, you guessed it, BlackRock and Vanguard. But look at the biggest piece of the pie. 25% is held by the U.S. government itself and the Federal Reserve. Yeah, it's a closed loop, a financial snake eating its own tail. So what does a system like this actually mean for, regular people like you and me? The answer has a name, the Cantillon effect. See, when new money is created, it's not like it's dropped from a helicopter for everyone to grab. Nope, it gets injected right at the top into the financial system. And the people closest to that money spigot, the big banks, the huge corporations, they get to spend it first, snapping up assets before prices have a chance to rise. By the time that money finally trickles down to the rest of us, its buying power is already weaker because of inflation. It's an inequality engine built right into the design.
And that inequality, it's not just some abstract economic theory. These trillions and trillions of dollars have a very real, very human cost. Because when this giant debt machine sputters or breaks down, it leaves a trail of wreckage in its wake. So let's move away from the charts for a minute, and here's some stories from the front line. This was Dimitris Christoulas. He was a 77-year-old retired pharmacist in Greece. When the Greek debt crisis hit, brutal austerity policies were forced on the country, all to pay back foreign banks. His pension, which he had paid into his entire life, was slashed again and again until he just couldn't survive on it anymore. And in a final act of protest, he walked to the front of the Greek parliament and he took his own life. His note is just a gut-wrenching reminder of the human cost of balancing a spreadsheet. Or take a look at Sri Lanka. They were literally drowning in foreign debt, so the government made this desperate, catastrophic decision. To save cash for their debt payments, they banned all fertilizer imports overnight. The result? A self-inflicted famine. You can see it right here in the data. Rice production, their staple food, collapsed by almost half. Food prices skyrocketed by 80%. Millions were pushed to the edge of starvation.
And this quote from a fruit vendor in Colombo just brings it all home. Without food, we are going to die. It shows you just how terrifyingly short the line is between a sovereign debt crisis that you read about in the news and an empty plate at the dinner table. Her entire livelihood just evaporated because nobody could afford to buy anything but the absolute basics anymore. And then you have a place like Argentina, where this kind of crisis isn't a one-time event, it's just life. With inflation in the triple digits, everyday existence becomes completely surreal. Money is a hot potato. You spend it the second you get it because it'll be worth less tomorrow. You see dog walkers wrangling 15, 20 dogs at once, not because they're ambitious, but because they have to, just to keep up. It's an entire society trapped in this financial twilight zone.
So the system is it's incredibly fragile. And, as we've seen, it can be unbelievably cruel. Which leads us to the final and most critical question. How does this all end? When a society gets this deep in debt, history tells us there are really only 4 ways out. Let's look at the endgame.
The investor Ray Dalio lays out the 4 historical paths, and honestly, none of them are pretty. Option 1 is austerity, caught/spending, like we saw in Greece, but you risk a deep depression. Option 2 is to just default, refuse to pay, but you risk blowing up your entire banking system. 3, you can try wealth redistribution, heavily taxing the rich to pay it all off. And number 4, the most popular choice throughout history, just print more money and try to inflate the problem away, which is basically a stealth tax on anyone who saves. There are no painless options on this menu.
But there are some economists thinking outside the box. They're talking about a 5th, more radical option, a modern debt jubilee. The idea is actually pretty simple. Here's how it would work. The central bank would create new money, but instead of giving it to the big banks, it would deposit it directly into every single citizen's account. But there's one catch. You have to use that money to pay off any debts you have first, your mortgage, your credit card, your student loans. The theory is that this would wipe out trillions in private debt, freeing up the entire system from the bottom up, without kicking off hyperinflation. It's a bold idea for sure, but maybe a necessary one. And so in the end, this is the choice we're facing. That $323 trillion question isn't really about money or economics. It's about values. It forces us all to ask a much deeper question. What is an economy even for? Do we keep serving the cold, hard arithmetic of debt, no matter what the human cost, or do we finally find the courage to rewrite the rules and build a system that actually serves us? The answer to that is going to define the world for a long, long time.